Hello, everybody. It is March 12th, work group LTS. It's the post-code freeze meeting, so some of us are quiet and tired, but we don't have a ton on the agenda, but it'd be good to talk through some things ahead of KubeCon and just see what's going on. So let me present my screen and then we will get going. All right. First off, was there anyone on the call who's new who would like to introduce themselves? I'm trying to see if I recognize names.
Yep. I'm new here. I'm Brad Askar. I'm product manager at Redis, responsible for our Kate's product and also for security.
Welcome. Glad to have you. Always glad to have more East Coast folks on the call. Anybody else?
Yeah, hey, this is my second meeting, but I don't think we've met. So I'm Perk. My real name is Marcin. I come from Poland, and I'm a product manager for Kubernetes at Canonical.
Excellent. Welcome. Right. There were a couple sort of announcement FYI type things that I wanted to mention up top. One of the things we're actually finding, in addition to trying to figure out how to leave sort of Kubernetes release branches in a better state for people who are consuming them, who want to keep consuming them past the open source end of life deadlines. In addition to just the core Kubernetes pieces, we're realizing that the things that Kubernetes depends on also need to be usable, and if Kubernetes is in good shape but it has dependencies that are out of support and unmaintained, you're not really in a usable state. And so a couple key ones are containerd and the Go runtime itself. And so we've been trying to work with those projects to either figure out ways to align their support timelines with Kubernetes releases, or at least make them aware of the dependency so that if it makes them extend things or change how they do their compatibility stuff. So I linked to a couple issues or pull requests on the containerd side. The 2.0 release was supposed to hit, I think, now, February, March, something like that. It slipped out a little bit. And because of that, it's likely that we won't be qualifying 130, Kubernetes 130 on containerd 2.0. So that alignment meant that most people using Kubernetes 130 will be doing so with containerd 1.7. And so we're trying to let the containerd folks know that, and they were pretty responsive. They bumped out the 1.7 support window longer to help accommodate that or contain some of that, and also added notes around Kubernetes 129 and 130. So the intent was to sort of align 130 with the last patch release in the containerd 1 stream, and then the 2.0 work in progress. Like whenever 2.0 is done, like at that point, then they'll figure out, all right, now we can sort of cap off the 1x stream. Anyway, I'm encouraged to see sort of holistic approaches to how we do support, knowing that just one thing in isolation doesn't really get us what we need. The Go, this is the Golang. We thought this was in a good state as of Go 121. The Go team did a lot of work on compatibility between minor versions of Go and defaulted runtime behavior to match previous minor versions based on the Go version indicated in your module. So if we were building Kubernetes release branches and just left our Go version at whatever we originally released that branch at, 120 or whatever, we could build with Go 121 or Go 122 or Go 123, and it would just pick up the defaults for runtime, any runtime compatibility behavior changes. It would say, oh, you want to build with Go 120 behavior, so we can do that. And so they committed to keeping backwards compatibility for runtime behaviors for at least 2 years, which covered the open source lifetimes and even all the cloud provider lifetimes that we're seeing. There was a little bit of a miscommunication. There was a simultaneous effort in the Go Lang release that would force that directive to move up if any of your dependencies had moved their directive up a version. And so the compatibility switches are there, the guarantees are there, but the thing that controls those compatibility switches, we sort of lost control of that. And so we realized this and brought it up with the Go folks, and they have a proposal to give like a distinct indicator to say, this is the version I want compatibility with. So we're sort of in a fragile state right now. As long as we can keep our directive saying like we want compatibility with this version, we will get it. But if any of our dependencies bump up, then that could force us up on a release branch. So we're keeping a close eye on dependencies and trying to spread the word to the Go ecosystem, like, hey, don't bump this version if you don't need to until this gets ironed out. But it looks like this proposal is likely to be accepted, and so by this August is when Go 123 comes out. Hopefully, we'll be sort of back in the good state we thought we were in. Anyway, these are just like Containerd and Go are two key ones. etcd is another one, but we have a distinct effort in Kubernetes proper with SIG etcd, so we have good involvement there. If there are other key dependencies that anyone is aware of, signal boosting that and trying to do similar things where we don't just consume and like, well, what can we do? They made changes. What can we do? Like actually engaging those communities and saying, hey, we have this dependency. We're impacted this way. Are there things we can do to help, or like, how can we make life better for all of our users? So the other was just the doc that I started last time. We were talking about sort of ways to help people in the Kubernetes project understand the impact, good and bad, of changes that are made minor version to minor version that are user impacting, like action required changes. And so I started up a doc and sent it out. I think folks were probably pretty busy with the inter-release stuff and KubeCon, but Mo, this might tie into your question. Maybe boosting things like that at KubeCon, if there's discussions, would be helpful. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mo.
Did you say you were handing it over to me? I couldn't hear that last part.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that topic does sound good, but so in general, what I wanted to ask with the folks on this call was, so I don't think any of y'all are going to KubeCon that I know of, like at least you, Jordan, and Micah. I'm not sure if you're going. I know Rita's not going. I know Jeremy's not going. So like, there's not necessarily a lot of coverage from the working group folks for LTS at KubeCon. So Rita had asked me to just kind of propose something just so we can continue to have conversations there, because obviously folks in Europe care, even if we're not there. So I just wanted to ask what kind of things that I should talk about. So obviously the having a culture of keeping things working seems important. I know a while back you guys were discussing the topics around like the viability of having a community LTS and like what are the things necessary and like, or what are the things missing today that prevent us from doing that. Certainly I can bring that up, but if there's other things that have been discussed or you feel are important, I think we already closed the survey, right? I could maybe discuss some of the results of that, or just, I don't know, just hang on.
One thing that I remember was useful the last time we were all in a room, a lot of the people at the Contributor Summit were also involved in other projects. And so this fan out effect, or the fan out implications of support, I think Mike Brown was there on the Containerd side. And like that was super useful. just trying to figure out like what are the implications if you need to use Kubernetes longer, then you also need to use this longer, and you also need to use this longer. But if you're supporting a 1.6 stream of containerd and you've got a new feature, then you've got pressure to like backport features into stable branches, and trying to like game out some of the cross project implications was helpful. Like so if there are people in the room that are on other projects that are Cube adjacent, that like what would the impact be if you had to support your project against this, or Cube depended on your project and you needed to support it for another X months, years? That hasn't really been something we talked about in the survey. The survey was very user focused, but like to actually deliver deliver support, you kind of need all the pieces to work, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the pieces beyond Cube.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I know downstream in our own effort, we've had a lot of discussions around those topics, just because, well, as you mentioned, Kubernetes by itself doesn't necessarily like mean a whole lot, right? There's a lot of other projects that you either run co-located with it, like containerd or whatever, but also lots of add-ons you might add to give yourself functionality. And so all of that has to work together, because the customer doesn't really care where Kubernetes ends or starts, right? They just need it to work. So yeah, I can certainly bring those up. Let's see, some stuff in the chat.
You should just type it in the notes, Micah.
Yeah. Do we? I mean, to Mo's point on add-ons and kind of on the previous point of other ecosystem with containerd and Go, have we talked to core DNS, or do we just assume we can just upgrade that for old versions?
I don't know. I haven't talked to them.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I mean, the places we do upgrades and things would be like Cube Atom. I don't think we backport version upgrades of add-ons so much.
Right. Yeah. I think we don't. There's a few cases where we have in core DNS, like the wildcard DNS lookup and stuff. But I think we mostly don't. It's mostly just like we rebuild it and bump the Go version.
I like some of this, it'd benefit if we had a little firmer understanding of what LTS is. Like Jordan mentioned backporting features, but I wouldn't expect any new features to come in to LTS versions. So like what would the expectations of these projects be? Do they just continue doing security patches, maybe a few critical fixes? But I don't know how close we are to getting to that point of, if we say there is an LTS, what does an LTS actually mean?
I wouldn't expect features either, but we certainly see pressure, like the so like the containerd thing is a good example. Mike was talking about like pressure to take a feature back to 1.6 because Kubernetes, it's a new feature in Kubernetes. And so like they have a similar starting point with like, no new features, it's a maintenance branch.
Yeah. So maybe it's
yeah,
the opposite direction then. Their LTS against current Cube.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're probably going to be really hard-nosed about no features in Cube maintenance branches. But we would get the same pressure. We would just say no much more strongly. The flip side of no new features in maintenance branches is some of the improvements, like operational improvements, like you can put validation rules into CRD manifests instead of having to run webhooks to validate stuff. Like that's really great operationally. If you have a community project that's releasing CRDs today, if they want to make their CRDs work on all open source supported Cube versions, they basically have to wait a year. for any feature before they can make use of it. If we have community LTS, then is the expectation that community projects releasing CRDs will wait for 2 years to make use of like improved validation features and things like that? Like obviously, if a vendor is going to support it for a year longer, whatever they choose to integrate with their platform, they have to figure out, do we have branches of all of our integrations and we use new features and new branches and old features and old branches? If we have a single version of our add-on that's supporting all of our Cube versions, then yeah, we've got to wait if we've got 2 years of versions in the fleet. But that's a decision they can make for themselves, cost benefit analysis. If the open source project shifts to supporting 2 years of versions, it's like all the Cube SIG projects that are releasing CRDs, like what are we expecting them to do, like Gateway and things like that? I really worry that it's going to become this vicious cycle of like, we have an improvement, but no one actually uses it for 2 years, so we don't actually know if it works until it's out of the beta phase into the GA phase, like, and it's just going to grind like use and feedback to a halt. That's a real concern of mine. So anyway, all of those questions are questions I like to ask people, especially at the contributor summit, because you have a lot of people who are building things on Cube. It's like, how would you react if there were 2 years of community supported versions? How would that make you change how you make use of new capabilities? Jot that down as a question to ask anybody in the room who is
I know
building.
it's been a while since I've written a Helm chart, but I know I just looked up. Charts can specify like a semver range for Kubernetes version support, but I don't know if that like injects into templates, and people probably, even if it does, I don't know if people take advantage of that to say like, oh, I'm going to use this version of this API or not.
I mean, like if it's the difference between a field and not a field, like I could see that. If it's the difference between like I have 85 validation rules in my CRD manifest, or I have a webhook, like that's kind of madness. Like
yeah.
if I
Yep.
Yeah, so just a random comment. It's been a while since I had to do something like that, but I remember I couldn't even do something basic like try using the V1 API if present. If not, use the V1 beta 1 API. If not, desperately try the alpha API. I was like, this is super basic, y'all. Like I gotta have a bunch of manifests with a bunch of crazy if statements, and I have to ask the user to make the choice. This seems silly. But yeah, so I don't think we're even at the point of choosing between validation, like validations versus webhooks. I think we have a hard time just picking between API versions.
I'm not sure if anyone from Gateway API is going to be there. I'm not sure if Rob Scott is going to be there or not.
Well, Rob will be there because he's presenting with me.
Is he? Great.
Yeah, we'll be talking about referential OTC, Jordan. That thing that is totally undecided.
That's great. Gateway API is actually a really good really good example case. Like they're an out of tree project that uses custom resources, that has complex validation, that takes support really seriously. Like they've thought through their support statements, and I think they target supporting 5 versions of Kubernetes right now, which is already kind of a stretch. And I know they've been interested in shifting away from running webhooks for things to, or they were trying to avoid webhooks and trying to do as much as possible with the built-in validation. So it would be interesting to find out from them like what expanded open source version support would look like and what the implications for them would be. Like, would that be, could they absorb that? Would that break them? Yeah, I would definitely pick his brain on that.
Okay. Yeah, so I do have a dedicated slot in the agenda for the contributor summit. So I can, like, Micah, if you're going to be there, I might drag you in with me, and you can probably drag Rob in too.
Yeah, I can be there. And I just chatted with Phil SSE's game from Container D.
Okay, that sounds good.
Were there other things that people wanted to talk through while we're on the call?
So if you
I'm so out of it. When is KubeCon? I don't
Next
even
week.
know. Is it next week? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was soon. I didn't know when. Anything else going on?
I wonder. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wonder if maybe the question should be asked actually directly. If you know, if users would rather have the LTS version, you know, have the new features, or actually not have the new features and only accommodate the security patches.
I don't think new
Maybe
features is an option. So I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't ask a.
Or so even okay, even the bug fixes. Sorry, so yeah, so to make myself clear, the bug fixes, you know, bug fixes, or only the security, you know, fixes.
I think that was one of the questions in the survey. Like, what do you expect in an LTS? And the majority was just security fixes. Some said security fixes and bug fixes. There's also types of bug fixes. If it's fixing a regression, that seems way more fair game. Like, you know, this miner broke something, we should at least get it back to status quo. That seems fair game if it's low risk. But a long-standing bug, like, part of the research we did for this was just showing how often our backported bug fixes caused some other problem. And so we've actually gotten pretty strict about saying, we'll fix regressions, we'll fix security issues, we'll fix catastrophic bugs like data loss bugs, things like that. But if it's a bug that's existed for many releases, just we'll fix it in the latest miner. You can wait for the latest miner.
That's good. I've missed that, but it's good that we have a common understanding there. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else have anything to toss into the agenda? If not, we can wrap up early and people can go get ready for KubeCon.
It's the not, I mean, KubeCon was a month later last year, but it's the almost 1 year of the KubeCon EU last year where we sort of kicked this all off. It'll be good to, not everyone here necessarily will be on at the conference, but I think it'll be good to, at the contributor summit, have this meet and greet to sort of say, and potentially at the conference too, to say, to see what's the temperature. Is this still like as much of a, yeah, just take the temperature, I guess.
Yeah. With some of these like ecosystem support things and like leaving Kubernetes release branches in a much clearer state for people who need to just keep patching them longer. Like to me, that this was the heavy lifting. And like seeing open source projects spend its time on just sort of general upgrade stability and improvements that would have improved the lives of people who were upgrading non-LTS versions and LTS versions that they were maintaining themselves. I'm pretty happy with the progress that's been made in the last year. I know it's certainly easier for me to maintain release branches now than it was a year ago. Once they hit end of life in open source. So, but yeah, it'd be good to get people's thoughts. All right. I think I will stop it there. It's good to see everybody. Take good notes from the KubeCon stuff, and we'll sync up after.